Howdy, fellow Vine Trippers. I wanted to take just a moment before the show starts to let you know about a great website called Texas Wine Lover. They can be found at txwinelover.com. And they have a comprehensive website that can become your go-to site for information on Texas wines, winemakers, and the wineries that can be found in this state. They even have a phone app that you can download, and that will help you plan your route to create your own wine trip. So make sure and check them out at txwinelover.com. Welcome to Texas Under Vine, an exploratory podcast to scout out the best that Texas wine country has to offer. I'm your wine guide, Scott, and I'm here to lead you on an auditory expedition to the vineyards and wineries across the great Lone Star State. Each episode will cover a different vineyard, winery, or wine-related business operating in Texas. You'll hear interviews, descriptions, and details about each location that will excite you to visit and experience them for yourself. Ready to plan a wine tour? Use these episodes to choose the most interesting spots for you and your friends to check out. Most of all, enjoy hearing about the rapidly growing wine industry in the state and what makes our wines and wineries the best. Howdy, fellow Vine Tripper. Welcome to episode 4 for Texas Under Vine. Today, I'm taking you on a scenic trip to the Hill Country as we venture to Dripping Springs and visit Hawk's Shadow Winery. So this winery is a little off the beaten path. It's a beautiful drive down to get there, and it's kind of like at the end of this little twisting road. There are 3 owners of this winery, Doug, Tom, and Chip, and it's a family business with their wives. And I got to sit down with all 3 of them to talk a little bit about their operations. Doug and Tom are brothers, and Chip is brother-in-law. So they all kind of manage different parts of the business and different things. And in the interview, you're going to get to hear from all 3 of them as they kind of address some of the questions that I had. And so it's a real delight to be able to hear from all 3 of them and their different perspectives on the winery itself. Like I said, this is very much kind of off the beaten path, but it's a gorgeous drive through the Hill Country. And even more so when you get there and you pull in, it's just their property has just a breathtaking view of the Hill Country. It's just one of the most beautiful overlooks that I've seen. They are family oriented. All tastings are seated at tables. They don't do bar service. So, when you come in and you decide you want to taste some wine and check things out, you'll probably be greeted by Doug, Tom, or Chip. And they'll sit you down. They'll talk to you. All of the members on their staff are part of their winemaking process. So whoever's coming to help you with your tasting can answer whatever questions you have, kind of fill you in on a lot of the different things that they offer and the backgrounds and the history of the making of that particular wine and so forth. So, it's a real welcoming environment when you come in. They also have a really cool barrel room that's actually burrowed down into the limestone underneath the tasting room. So there's a fun little staircase that you can make your way down into the limestone walled barrel room downstairs and see where they keep their barrels in this nice, cool environment. They even have a big table down there where they do some special events with some tastings and some dinners and things like that amidst all the barrels. And so it's a really fun feature to be able to see at their winery. So as one of their tastings, they actually have the ability where they will take you down into the barrel room as they're talking to you about the wines. And they do this tasting of Tempranillo, and they have this same wine, the same Mourvedre that they processed from the same grapes, but they put it in 2 different oak barrels. They're a time zone apart. So one of the oak barrels is from Minnesota and one is from Pennsylvania, because one of the things that you'll find is with oak, depending upon where the oak is from, can have an impact on the way the wine tastes. So at Hawk Shadow, they really like to educate you on the wines and kind of see and experience these different things. And so as part of that tasting, they're going to let you sample this Mourvedre from the 2 different barrels. So you can see wine done in a barrel from Minnesota versus a wine done in a barrel from Pennsylvania have slightly different flavors and different things, that textures and things that come out in the wine, just based on the oak from 2 different locations. And that's American oak. Don't even get started on French oak versus Hungarian oak versus American oak and all that fun stuff. But this is just 2 oak barrels from the U.S., a time zone apart, and you can taste the difference between them. It's a really unique kind of experience, and it's a lot of fun down in the barrel room to be able to taste that directly from the barrel and compare the differences. Another thing I like about Hawk Shadow that's really interesting is they're not locked into making the same taste for every vintage. They're not trying to make a line of wine that tastes the same year in, year out. Some vintners do that, and they like to add things to the wine or play around with the chemistry or different things to try to make sure they have the similar taste or close to the same taste every vintage year. Tom and Doug and Chip don't do that. They like to let the grapes speak for themselves and let every vintage be what it's going to be. You'll hear a little bit about that in the interview, but they have multiple different varietals that they've done and wines that they've released year after year since they've been starting. And it's like almost every year tastes a little different from the previous year based on all kinds of things like the weather, the way the wine was made. All kinds of things can impact the way that grape tastes, and the wine comes out year after year. So they let the terroir speak for itself. Terroir, for those of you that don't know, just means the impact on the fruit of the location of where it's grown. So the type of soil, the type of weather, the climate, the way it gets hot in the day versus cool at night. All of those things go into how a grape can express itself. And so a grape grown in one place can express itself completely different from another place, even though it's the exact same grape. And so that's just a simple definition of terroir. But they let that speak for itself into how their grapes are grown and let those grapes express themselves for what they're going to be. So I got to sit down, like I said, with Doug, Tom, and Chip. Got to get their unique perspectives about Hawk Shadow. We passed the mic around between them, so bear with me. There's a little bit of rustling noise here and there that I couldn't really get completely out. But if you bear with me, it's really nice to be able to hear because they all got to provide their insight on what makes Hawk Shadow so special. So let's hear from them. So I'm sitting with
Tom Reed,
Chip Concklin,
Doug Reed.
All right. Well, we'll start off here. And again, we can decide who wants to answer each question, but we may want to all three do this one. So I was just the first question is just tell me a little bit about yourself and what got you interested in the wine industry.
It's been a passion for a long time. Certainly got elevated during traveling to California for business for years, and then that kind of definitely brought that more. Did more collecting, tried a lot more wines, and so that actually brought my interest up quite a bit. And then just over time with other regions and trying to explore, did some travel to Europe, did some travel to Australia as well. And so all those actually had wine in those regions. So it was kind of definitely a motivation to kind of understand some of that.
Chip?
After grad school, I worked in pharmaceutical research, and the nature of my job in business development ultimately took me into more of a overseeing meetings. I got to do a fam trip to Bordeaux in early 2000 that just opened my eyes to wines. I have a brother who loves wine in San Francisco and a brother-in-law who loves wine, and they introduced me and got me curious and going.
And Tom?
I think like the rest of the three amigos here, my interest was just started as a person who had that light bulb moment with wine and food. And for me, it was a desire to understand wine at a depth that felt a little bit behind the curtain. I wanted to go past the idea of seeing wine from only the perspective of a consumer, and wanted to understand a bit more about what was the magic that happened in wine, because it felt magic to me. And so that was a step we all three, I think, felt about that back in the mid 2000s, and kind of took the plunge to start planting grapes and then eventually making wine commercially.
Well, that leads me perfectly to the next question. So tell me a little bit about the location's history. How'd you get started? And
Okay. Well, I actually bought this property, leased it in 85. At that time, it was just, we had some animals, and so we raised horses and cows, and so we had those and needed a place for them. And so I leased the property actually for friends that I'd had for a long time. They, in 89, decided to get rid of the property and ask if I was interested. And so I went ahead and purchased the property in 89. It was in the early 90s. I had some cabins that I built down at the bottom. And in the early 90s, we actually were foolish enough to play with planting a few grapes and realized that, oh, by the way, this is the worst place possible. Too much clay. It's too cold and it freezes all the time because it's way at the bottom of the hill. And so all the cold air goes down there. Well, those did not survive. But anyway, fast forward a little bit until 2004. We were all, it was probably an occasion. I think it was Thanksgiving. We were all talking about doing something. So the thought of doing a vineyard came up. We had Jim Camas, which was agricultural exemption guy, came out and looked at everything, and he was like, okay, I think it would maybe work, but you're going to have some challenges. You won't have to worry about controlling growth because it's all limestone. It's just a bunch of limestone rock. So formed Hawk Shadow LLC in 2004, and then we actually planted the first grapes, which were Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, Tempranillo, and Sangiovese in 2005. Managed to not kill that over the year. In 2009, we harvested grapes and sold those to another vineyard or another winery. In 2010, we got our winery license. And because the wine actually in 2009 turned out really pretty. So we went, well, let's kind of explore. So in 2010, formed Hawk Shadow LLC. In 2009, we excavated for the cellar and we built the building there, the start of the building, which was behind us. And then in 2010, again, kind of finished off, got our winery license, made our first wine in 11. 2010, we also planted the vineyard down below. September of 14, we started construction on this part of the building and finished the cellar and the tasting room in this part of the building in 2015, in June of 15. The name kind of came about when we were first hashing this out. You punch through a lot of different names. We were looking at, back in 2004, trying to figure out what we would do. But so as we were punching through options, the name of one of our horses, he was like this giant 1,200-pound lab. So everybody knew him. He had a great personality. Kids would play with him all the time, and he enjoyed that. So that was part of Hawk Shadow, and everything kind of circled back to that. And so in 2004, went ahead and actually created the name for that. And then that was for the winery, or the vineyard rather. And then, of course, the winery just followed on that.
And that's, I presume, the horse in the logo is...
Yes. Yeah. So that was actually, I don't remember when it was after we had created the LLC. I'd done that and filed all the paperwork, and we'd signed off all that. But Chip's wife had talked to her about it, and So Maureen had created this sketch pencil drawing, and I think Carol, she got it, and Carol's always drawn horses for her whole life. She's had horses since she was about 8, so who is my wife. And so we kind of bounced it back and forth, but between the two of them, that became then the logo, which has actually been, everybody's really liked it. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add to that.
Not so much on chronology, but just appreciation. When we started, Jim Camas was very helpful to us and gave us his very honest opinions, which, we were surprised about. Not surprised, but interesting. We benefited from meeting Chris Brundrett early, and became friends with him, as well as Tim Drake, who was another winemaker. The industry has been very open and helpful to all newcomers, and we definitely benefited from others helping us.
I'll speak maybe just a little bit about the moving from our first winemaking experience to sort of where we are today. We realized very quickly that our property here in our vineyard was going to be oriented towards some very specific things we felt strongly about, and they were all red wines, and that not everybody is interested in just red wines. So we started to, with the help of the community, find other vineyard sources in Texas. We've always felt strongly that our purpose of being was to make wine from Texas grapes in Texas. And so we continued to work through that. And it's been an incredibly educating experience to see how diverse the vineyards of Texas are, and find, really through predominantly Doug's help, to connect to them and find that sort of family relationship that we feel like we have in our estate vineyard with other vineyard properties around the state. And we've really benefited and changed style from there. So today, about 75+% of our production comes from vineyards outside of our estate vineyard. So we focus on both these days, and have found that it's been extraordinarily valuable as an educating tool for us to understand. You can only plant and support so many grapes yourself. We're a very young vineyard, very young wine region. We need to be experimenting madly. So it was a wonderful opportunity to sort of see things, grapes, types of vineyard area that we would have never had exposure to without that. So today, we're all Texas, but our grapes come from really every end of the spectrum of areas of Texas.
Well, that's perfect. That answered my next question, was where do you source your grapes? So that leads me then to the next question from after you sourced your grapes. So do you process all of your grapes or wines on site?
Yes, we do all of our production on site. Everything from crushing and destemming, fermenting, aging, bottling, labeling. So cradle to grave is all done here, including growing. Now, like Tom mentioned, we certainly source stuff from beyond our estate because it doesn't produce enough to be able to do what our production needs are. But yeah, it's something I guess we're just very focused on, or very intent on, is maintaining control over that. It's been great, including all of our staff. Matt has been a huge help to us on a lot of that, but it's rippled somewhat into the tasting room from the standpoint of when you do cradle to grave at a facility, people are very excited to hear the story of, okay, where did this come from? And people we all work in the tasting room. All the tasting room staff help during harvest as well. Everyone knows the story of, oh, I remember when we crushed this grape, it smelled like this. And when we pressed it, or when we fermented it, yeah, this one went real easy. Oh, this was a nightmare. We had to put our hands in this and, stir it by hand because the punch down tool wasn't going to work because this came in really, high in raisins, or that was what we got that year. So All those stories ripple into things that I think the people in general enjoy really hearing about. And so it does allow us to connect, and our tasting room staff can speak, all of us can speak firsthand about, oh, yeah, I remember when this was made. And people respond to that from the standpoint of, enjoying hearing about it.
I love that. Every vintage has its own story.
They do. And I mean, we could sit here for an hour and tell stories about different vintages.
Personally, what are your favorite wines that you make and sell?
Oh, boy, that's a pretty tough one. I would say there's a broad diversity. We do a dry Riesling, which the aha moment for that came on a trip to Wiesbaden, Germany, and a Thai restaurant with my wife. And we had this dry Riesling that was like, oh my God, people should really experience this grape, and found that it's almost impossible, it seems like, to get something like that in the US or in Texas. And 2015, we were able to get Riesling from the High Plains, and that turned into something that we carry every year. It's kind of one of our staple wines, and also one of our biggest selling wines. I think it's part of it is people really appreciate it because it's surprising in that they had never had a dry Riesling before, and it became an aha moment for them. Is like, wow, I didn't realize they had this. And, I think in general, it's an underappreciated grape. So it kind of always has a little place in my heart there. I would say from a red perspective, the Cab Franc is probably is where my heart is in the red. It just is all over red, and a great steak wine. And so we do a lot with Cab Franc, and it makes a beautiful wine.
We all have our own story. We produced a series of wines several years ago called Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. It was Cabernet Sauvignon from a vineyard up near Canadian, Texas. Beautiful fruit. We picked it late in the fall after a cold front, and everything just worked wonderfully. Tom's idea to split the wine, the same tank, into different barrels and then bottle them separately, which is where we ultimately got the name Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. That was a lot of fun because we put it in different oak barrels. And then after aging, we bottled the barrel lines separately. It's the same wine. So you could see how the oak impacted the wine. It was wonderful. And people love to do the side by side. When it's side by side, you can smell, okay, I get the vanilla and I get the cherry and I get you taste side by side, you get the different finishes. Wonderful experience. That was such an aha moment for so many people as well, to understand oak and how an oak barrel impacts the wine. That's my favorite.
Don?
What I think is core to us from the earliest days of why we decided to do this was that ability for us to sort of peek behind the curtain and understand wine from a more complete perspective than just opening a bottle and loving it with a meal is, I think that's really core to who we are, and that this idea of transparency really equates to the word authenticity was why we were here. That was what our joy of wine was centered on, and we felt like that's something that we should share openly. So being cradle to grave, being small, staying attached to that idea that wine is local, wine is of the people, wine should be something that should be adventurous and exciting and new and surprising, and it is all those things. And so that's really sort of core to us. So you asked about what our favorites were. I'm going to talk, there are a ton, but I'll talk about another grape that we haven't mentioned yet, and that is Mourvèdre. So Mourvèdre is a really good exemplar of what is in a grape, but yet shows up in a unique way in a different region, such as Texas. So the profile of the grape, I think, is there in every region that the grape grows, but the heights or the amplitudes or the kind of tells about the grape shift based on location. And in Texas, it was a very pronounced shift for me in terms of what Mourvèdre tastes like in Texas. So I think we were all drawn to that because I think in that idea of authenticity or locality or transparency, when you find something that you can kind of show to someone and say, this is Texas, that's really what makes the wine stand out for us. And I think across the line of all the grapes that Doug and Chip have described, or wines that Doug and Chip have described, that's core to that. And I think that's probably core to, what makes each of these grapes or different wines our favorites. So in 2012, we had our first experience with Mourvèdre, and I've been hooked ever since.
Well, in that kind of on a similar vein, but slightly different. So those are your favorites. What are the customer favorites? What are the ones that people keep coming back for and saying, oh, I like this. I really am drawn to this.
Wow, that gets to be really complicated. Mainly because we do develop a lot of different wines. So we're not, we're for better or worse. And I think part of that is just because we love exploring different possibilities. We have produced, I would have to look at a spreadsheet now, but I'm guessing it's somewhere between 70 and 100 different wines over the, 13 years that we've been, 12 years that we've been in business. And so that has, people still ask for some of the early wines that we did. Oh yeah, well, what about this one do you have? And we've libraried some of this stuff away, and so we'll still pull some of those out because again, we like to go back and look and see where those are heading. But so it's kind of a little bit challenging from that perspective, is to say which one. Juliet, which is the dry Riesling, has been a favorite year in, year out. People have really enjoyed that. Actually, back in 2020, we did our first sparkling out of Riesling as well. But Juliet is certainly a big favorite. Right now, I would say Emmett, which is a Cab Franc that we do, is leading the pack. We do a couple of different Southern Rhone styles, so Mourvèdre and Syrah blends that Tom was referring to before. Those are both very popular as well with current vintages. I would say kind of back to some of our estates. All of our estate wines they're field blended and co-fermented. So they're very unique. They're very unique to our estate. It's all grown on a giant limestone rock. So it has this very earthy, mineral driven side. So there are people that really appreciate that kind of old world, and that whether it's the Sangiovese blended with Syrah, or it's a GSM. We do a GSM here. We also do a Tempranillo, Grenache, and Mourvèdre, which is also very popular. So these wines, very different in their characteristics, but unique, very unique to our location. And then we've actually moved more, supporting more of the Bordeaux varietals as well. So we started to bring in more Cab Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Malbec. And that has kind of grown to its own line of wines as well. This year we released our first super premium. So we also do a super premium wines. We do a estate wine, which is kind of focused in an area. We do our regular wines from around the state. And then we've done a Hawk Shadow Select wine, which is our first super premium wine, and very focused on more Bordeaux varietals. These are, long aging, big in your face kind of wines.
Gosh, One of the things I see from a customer perspective is that as a small winery and a small family-owned winery, we like to do small runs. We like to experiment, try different things. I'd say more so than not, those have been very successful. And you make a popular wine, everyone thinks is novel and wonderful, and it's a small run. Of course, you sell out of it pretty quick. And so, we have these hits that we've done one-offs, and times we've done them over and over and over. Our rosés are completely unique. We have a Tempranillo rosé, which is very popular. It's the small runs and small blends that I think are kind of fun, that let people understand the wine that is possible in Texas. There are a lot of wine lovers in Texas, and everyone has a different taste. So there are many different styles of wine, but it's fun to explore the possibilities. And again, going to the industry, we're in our infancy. We're so young. There's so much evolution that still needs to happen. We need to figure out the industry. The industry needs to figure out where it wants to go.
So just data-wise, so we are 5 people, and we have thus far made 104 different bottlings. So diversity perhaps is really the answer. Like what do people like most about our wines, or what is their favorite thing, is more perhaps about the ability to have their individual experience and have a winery that has a broad enough portfolio. We're very likely going to find something both familiar and kind of in their zone, and also plenty of things that are not, plenty of things that are new and experience that they can come for, that will, be part of that education process of understanding the diversity of Texas and diversity of wine for that matter. The thing that Doug pointed to about 4 years ago was an aha moment for us that we had never anticipated. We realized Texas has more in common with the northern Mediterranean coastal regions of Europe than we do with California, Washington, and Oregon, just to pick a couple of North American areas. So we focused on grape types there and also wine styles there. We can talk a bunch about that, but the thing that we had never really seen historically was that that Bordeaux variety grapes were something unique, or something that we could actually create a semblance of what Europe loves about these grape types. And it was really with a bit more focused time for us in barrel selection and grape selection and vineyard and grape type and blend that we kind of happened upon this, a bit more focus on Cabernet Franc and Merlot in particular. So a bit more of the right bank of Bordeaux as opposed to the left for us, seemed to suddenly be this breakthrough moment of understanding how we could make a wine that people would find familiar yet different. Some kind of thing where we might see symbolically what it is about the right bank of Bordeaux that makes us all like the right bank of Bordeaux or have interest in it, but yet through the lens of Texas, through the lens of exactly how our biology and microbiology imparts its own unique viewpoint on those grapes. So those are for sure an area where we're seeing a heightened interest, probably biased because we have a heightened interest in doing that. But it is really about diversity. So whether you love wine grapes and styles of wine from Spain or from France or from Italy, you very likely have something that is going to map to that sort of style. And we have plenty of things that will maybe be in that area, but from a unique perspective, either blend types or wine style.
I love that. You can come in and find something that's familiar to you, but then be surprised by different things and other things you might not have had before. From a customer's perspective, who's never been here before, tell me a little bit about what they can expect about maybe doing a tasting here. What are the types of tastings you do, fees? Do you have a wine flight, or do they pick the wines they want? Or what are your options there for tastings?
Okay, so for tastings, we offer a number of different flavors. We have an all red wine, which is four different reds. We do a white, which is 3 whites and a rosé. And then we have a 4 wine tasting, which is just a white, a rosé, and a couple of reds. And, just kind of a quick glance at what we're doing. Then we have a more focused type of tasting, which is 6 different wines. And it's a couple of whites, a rosé, and then 3 reds. The reds in general for the 4 wine variety, we kind of pick those and we just worked our way down those, as well as the white wines. We kind of work through the whites that we have because it's kind of limited to what we have. So there's a bit of our own selecting there. Both the red and the tailored tasting that we have, which is the 6 wine tasting, are become a little bit more focused, primarily in the red department. Where we'll get you kind of to the reds, but this ripples back to, again, a kind of a general philosophy for the winery itself, in that we like to interact with our customers. Getting back to Tom's, I'm glad you looked that up. 105 different wines that we've made. We have this very diverse portfolio of wines that we can reach back to. So, encouraging discussions with our customers to get to know, what are your interests? Where do you want to go? Which certainly is more focused oftentimes in the red department. And it allows us then to kind of tailor some of those where, are you more of a Bordeaux varietal, drinker? Are you more of an Italian style wine drinker? Are you more of a Burgundy, Pinot kind of person? Then we can fit wines that kind of go that direction, as well as what Tom was talking about earlier, as well as, we'll throw some extra ones in there, another one in there that says, well, but you should explore this. So you get an opportunity to kind of tailor that a little bit your direction, but also see some new things, and we can kind of explore things along the lines of what people have interest for. Those in price vary from $12 right now to $22 for those. And then we offer kind of really a unique and fairly exceptional experience, I think, in that we offer a winemaker tasting. And that is generally 2 whites, rosé, and a couple of reds. More involvement, more interaction, of course, with the person. It's generally the staff here, which all are involved in the winemaking process. So you're with a winemaker. And then a tour and discussion about our history, what makes us unique, how we do things. That ripples back into things like, the facility is actually designed very similar to places I saw in Burgundy. So it's all built to use gravity. We're one of the few places in Texas that's fully designed to use nothing but gravity. We have a limestone cave cellar that has some unique characteristics to it. But all of these things get into, certain characteristics. But the part of the winemaker tasting, we get back to education, and that we still to this day, Chip alluded to the Larry, Daryl, and Daryl that were different. We've actually every year since then have kind of done a barrel selection. We've been able to barrel select those and get a wine that has different barrels. And that becomes kind of the educational part of the winemaker tasting, is the ability to try at least a couple of different wines out of barrel from the same wine, but just different barrels. In this particular case, we have a Tempranillo from our estate that's done in one barrel. The oak came from Pennsylvania. The other barrel, the oak came from Minnesota. And they're just shocked at the characteristics that are changed in the wine just by not just the barrel, but where the oak came from that made up that barrel. So that tasting is $50. I could go on for a lot longer than I need to on that, but it's we have very positive feedback. Really, people enjoy that a lot because it is a little bit of educational experience. It's also a chance to try some really interesting barrels down there as well. So that includes the barrel tasting.
I'm going to take it from a different perspective. When we built this, when we started, we were aware of this exceptional view that we have. We're very blessed to be on property that has just an outstanding view. And that is something unique that we like to offer to our guests. And along with that view, I think hospitality was kind of at our core. We wanted people to relax. We didn't want them standing at a bar. We want you to relax, enjoy, let the problems of the world go by you for a little bit. Try some wine, pretty day, good friends, best way to enjoy wine. So that, it's kind of an all-encompassing philosophy, I guess, of how we've looked at customers. We love sharing what we have, and it's a blessing to be able to do so. And it's fun. People, so many people from way out of town, out of state, who never knew there was a Texas Hill Country, the Tuscany of Texas. So it's fun to offer that. Our cellar also is very unique. People love going down in the cellar, and it's fun to describe, how it impacts the winemaking. It is truly different and wonderful.
So there isn't much more to say, but I'll say just a couple of things. One, for those that come to our winery, what should you expect, and what are we most centered on? One is that idea of family, casual, enjoy yourself, sit and relax. So we don't serve at a bar. You come and sit at a table. We will bring wines to you, centered around the idea of enjoying the Hill Country and experiencing what it is about this place that we love. Secondarily, our experience, and this is true universally across the staff, both the family members and the two employees that we have, is our interest in bringing you behind the curtain. We want you to know transparently everything that there is to do. So in the winemaker experience that Doug had talked about, depending on the time of year, that will probably involve some time where you're going to go up and watch us crush, or come up and punch down a fermenter if you wish to do that. So in every way, our experience and joy of Texas wine is not just necessarily in these hedonistic flavor profiles that one might see in a bottle of grape juice with ethanol. It is really about the whole experience that came behind that, and to see that. And I do believe that what has made wine regions of the world have the longevity that they have is that their attachment directly to the communities and people that come to that place to appreciate and understand that particular product and its unique location, properties, and see it through an entire experience, not necessarily just, through a smell and a taste in a glass.
So do you offer a wine club? If so, what are some of the benefits of that?
Yes, we do. That being said, we don't really focus our business around the wine club. We're a little more focused on just being able to have people experience our wines. But the people that are really interested in seeing how the, different wines and how they evolve, and getting back to, I think, some comments earlier by Tom and Chip that, we have this great diversity, and each year you get to kind of see different. It's not like the same wines every year. It's going to be Bordeaux here. It may be Spanish wines. It could be a lot of different things. So there's a lot of diversity in those. And some people like that. And it's I think it's made some fans. And so for those people who really do enjoy that, we do offer a wine club. It's fairly straightforward. We just do four wines 2 times a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And we offer a 10% discount to people for those, and then their tasting show is free here. And then we put on a little bit of a wine club pickup thing. It's kind of evolved after COVID shut everything down. We started doing less big events and more small things where, people can kind of pick their own schedule to be out, pick up their wines, and do it over a longer period of time or multiple weekends and that kind of thing.
And if somebody can't come here to pick up, or do you do shipping?
We do. We ship to, I don't know how many. It's probably some 35 different states. So we do ship quite a few places around the country.
These are some basics questions, things like your operating hours, special events that you have. Are you family friendly? Pets allowed?
Currently our operating hours, and of course these all change, but our current operating hours are Monday through Thursday from 11 to 5, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are 11 to 6 p.m. Yes, we are family friendly. Although we do require, if you bring children or infants or whatever, that they just be supervised. Pets, kind of the same thing. They're certainly welcome, but again, supervision is needed just for everybody's safety and so forth.
So we've had lots of events. We see a lot of dinners, rehearsal dinners, corporate dinners, birthday dinners. We have the cellar, of course, is unique, and we can do a seated table, single large farm table downstairs, which is a fun experience in a barrel cellar. Dinners up in the tasting room. Of course, we have a beautiful view. We do weddings, several weddings, and we have a pergola built outside and have done several ceremonies out under the sky or the stars. That's a lot of fun. And then the reception in. So, we've had one of the corporate events where companies just came out, bought the place out for a day and brought people in. We hosted a tasting of the Texas Wine Growers Association. Is that right? Texas Wine Growers.
Yeah.
12 different wineries that came in and did tasting for a group of world-renowned experts in tasting it was just wonderful. So we offer a plethora of options. We have space. We have tables. We have space. We have a beautiful view. We're open to lots of different events.
Do you have maximum group sizes or need reservations, things like that?
Group size for events, 40 down in the cellar. We can do a seated dinner for 40. Upstairs, 80 to 100 is kind of a comfortable fit, or anything less than that. Above that, we start to run into space problems if we're limited to inside. If it's a beautiful evening and we can put tables out on the deck, then it's always a wonderful experience. It just depends on the weather.
To answer the group size question, I think for tasting events, for coming to the winery, we prefer to have that more intimate relationship. So group sizes larger than 8, we require a reservation for, and we would like reservations anyway, just so that we can make sure everyone has the experience we want them to have when they come.
And they do that on your website?
That's correct.
Busy, slow seasons, what's the best time to visit?
Wow. Obviously, because we have such it's a beautiful view. When the building was designed, I was actually working on it. I bought the garage doors, so we have 3 big 16-foot, 10-foot high, 16-foot wide garage doors that are clear. And those make up one wall of the tasting room, which are all we can't open. So during the spring and the fall, it does allow us to, be a little bit more open. And I think we've got such a great view. It certainly drives customers here. I mean, people go, oh yeah, and they see those pictures and like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I got to go visit there. So that is, I think, a real, spring and fall are probably our biggest times. And then, middle of winter and then the middle of summer, who wants to be outside when it's 105 degrees? So it's, we do, that being said, we have like right now where we have, yesterday was about as miserable as it gets, 35 degrees and raining. We have a fair amount of indoor space that allows us to continue and operate pretty well with an inside space. So both of those are doable, but yes, definitely spring and fall are our better, which is pretty much true of all the wineries here.
One of the things I neglected to ask a moment ago was, especially if people are bringing kids or things like that, food type options or drinks that aren't alcoholic. Are there options, or can people bring their own stuff in, or what would you recommend for that if they were?
Currently, we do allow people to bring food in. We're looking at doing a little bit more, expanding to more of a food truck and doing a complete food option kind of thing. That's in process right now. But we just do charcuterie, cheese kind of things. And since it's really not our focus in that business, having people bring stuff in is really not a problem. And we've had that, but we do actually sell quite a bit and keep on staff or keep here a fair amount of cheese options and charcuterie options and that kind of thing. And those are actually very popular as well. So we do have some food for that.
My next question leads to distribution. So if someone is not able to come to this location, or they've been here and they really like your wines and want them again, but they're not able to come, do you do any kind of distribution besides shipping? You stock any locations? Or
no, we don't. It's really just online sales. So those are purchasable through an online store. And currently, we'll have to kind of see how things go. The cost of shipping has gone up. But currently, I think we're at, if you purchase like $150 in wine, which is, not difficult to do, then we ship that for free. So we do provide free shipping for purchases of, a decent size. A lot of times that can easily be done, 4 bottles and you've kind of got there. And so that offers that people do enjoy having, because again, since we don't distribute, it does give them a chance to do that. And it's not really a big out of pocket thing for the shipping part of that.
So if somebody comes from out of the area, they fall in love with Juliet and they just got to have more, but it's hard to get here, they could order that online.
Certainly.
All right. Well, next question is, do you have any plans for future growth? What are your thoughts? You've already mentioned the food truck option, but what are your plans for growth?
From the wine perspective, we don't really plan to grow into a monster. So no, our focus really has always been and kind of currently, and I think it looks like for the foreseeable future, is to really focus on making these very unique, high quality wines, but in smaller quantities and being able to express some unique characteristics, like Tom had mentioned before, where we'll do, just like a single barrel of something. Well, you can only do that when you're a certain size. If you grow to be 50, 100,000 case winery, you can't do that. It just doesn't work in your business plan. And that's just, so there are lots of those, and there are some great places that produce great wines for those, but we're we're kind of focused on being small and unique and very agile that way. And for the foreseeable future, we're gonna stay that way. For doing events, we can probably maybe handle a little bit more event space or something like that. But for the time being, it's really all about focusing on the wine quality, trying to really improve our wine quality. How good can we go? And making that our focus.
What, in your opinion, do you think is the number one thing that sets your location apart and that would really want to entice people to come visit Hawk Shadow?
I think it is authenticity. I think if come here, if you really do want to try and look behind the curtain and understand Texas wine at a really fundamental level, I think that's where we are. That's what we love. That's going to be pretty evident in everything that we do. So come here for that sort of view into Texas wine in its totality.
Similar note, experience. I think people who come here, we want to give them experience. They're looking for lovely experiences. So everything from our view to our hospitality, to our wines, to our cellar, it makes the accumulation of all that makes us a little unique. And it's wonderful to offer that to people who are looking for something a little different. We're off the beaten path. And so we're an experience that is novel among many wineries. So,
okay, well, I'll get back to our tagline. So passion. That wine is our passion. Our tagline is passionately pursuing perfection, and that's really kind of what it is. It's passion.
So if you're headed out to the Hill Country to experience some wineries and are a fan of the beautiful views of the area, then Hawk Shadow is not to be missed. In addition, I was impressed by the fact that their owners were out and mingling at the customers' tables, chatting, discussing wine with them. It's a very friendly and homey type of experience. Sitting at a table felt relaxed and enjoyable. I can't wait to go back. I'm going to take my wife next time so that we can enjoy some more great wine while sitting outside, hopefully on a gorgeous day and taking in that incredible view. I also found their commitment to making the grapes speak for themselves and providing these different tastes from vintage to vintage to be really intriguing. It feels like you get to taste different wines every time you go to visit. And if you find one that really resonates with you, you better buy up a bunch of bottles, as it might be slightly different the next year based on that season's experiences. Lastly, getting down to the cellar and trying Tempranillo from the two different barrels was really fascinating. It was the exact same wine, but done in oak from those two different locations, only an hour apart time zone-wise. But you could definitely taste a slight difference between the expression of the wine from each one. So you got to try that if you get a chance. Check out their website at www.hawkshadow.com. A lot of info about the winery there, and decide what tasting experience is really the best fit for you. Then just pack up your car, head out to see them. Remember, they're family friendly and pet friendly. When you go, make sure to tell them you heard about them on this podcast. So at this point, I'm going to finish up this episode. I'm already working on future episodes that I've visited. Keep an eye on the website for when those locations are ready to release. If you're enjoying the show, please also consider joining me on Patreon. Your small donation of support goes a long way to help me cover my costs for bringing these exciting shows to you. Plus, you get a lot of extras that aren't available to non-patrons, like photos, videos, and sneak peeks into my travels. Check out the link on my Patreon page on my website, texasundervine.com. So subscribe to the podcast, follow my socials to be notified whenever the next episode is posted. Until next time, happy trails, and bottoms up, y'all. Thanks for listening to Texas Under Vine. We strive to provide you with the best information about wine businesses all over Texas. Be sure to check out our website at texasundervine.com and follow us on our socials at texasundervine to stay up on all the upcoming episodes. Please email us with any suggestions or feedback. Also, contact us if you're interested in donating, sponsoring, or advertising on the podcast, just to help us cover our expenses and bring even more great info to you in future episodes. Above all, travel safely, and most especially, drink responsibly. Don't forget to also check out the Texas Wine Lover website and their phone app. If you want to plan a trip to the wine destination I talked about in this episode, the site for Texas Wine Lover and their phone app that you can download will really help you organize a trip so you can go see them. You can check out all of the goodness that I got to experience while I was there. But as you're planning your trip, while you're on their website or their app, you can also find out things like accommodations, restaurants, and even some fun events and things that are going on at the wineries, and maybe even find one that you want to experience as part of your wine trip that you never even expected. So check them out. Again, it's txwinelover.com.